The CEO pretended to be an uninsured patient. Only one nurse believed his pain was real. The man collapsed in the crowded hospital waiting room, clutching his chest as sweat poured down his face. Dozens of people looked at him. Some stared. Some looked away. A few assumed he was exaggerating. The receptionist asked for insurance information before anything else. Nurses hurried past. Doctors were overwhelmed. And while everyone debated whether his suffering was serious, only one young nurse stopped, knelt beside him, and saw what nobody else wanted to see. Before we begin, if you believe kindness still matters in this world and that every person deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life. Ethan Callaway was one of the richest CEOs in the country. At 42 years old, he owned a healthcare corporation worth billions of dollars. His company operated hospitals, clinics, insurance programs, and medical facilities across several states. Financial magazines praised him as a genius. Business leaders admired his success. Investors trusted his decisions. But there was something Ethan never admitted. He had no idea what ordinary people experienced inside the healthcare system he helped control. Every report on his desk looked perfect. Customer satisfaction numbers were high. Executive summaries praised efficiency. Managers assured him that patients received excellent treatment. Whenever Ethan visited a hospital, everyone knew he was coming. Floors were polished. Staff smiled. Problems disappeared before he arrived. The more success he achieved, the further he drifted from reality. One evening, after attending another celebration for record profits, Ethan sat alone in his luxury penthouse overlooking the city. The room was silent except for the distant sounds of traffic below. He looked at the glowing skyline and felt strangely empty. Years earlier, his mother had died after struggling to afford treatment. He remembered sitting beside her hospital bed, promising himself he would one day make healthcare better for everyone. Somewhere along the journey, he had forgotten that promise. That night he opened several anonymous complaint letters that had somehow reached his office despite layers of management. The stories were heartbreaking. Patients described being ignored. Families described endless paperwork. Some claimed they were treated differently because they lacked insurance. At first Ethan wanted to dismiss the letters as isolated incidents. Then he remembered his mother. And he made a decision that would change his life forever. The following week, Ethan disappeared. Not completely, of course. His executive team believed he was taking a private vacation. His security staff were given limited information. Even his closest advisors did not know the truth. For the first time in years, Ethan dressed in worn clothing instead of expensive suits. He left his luxury watch at home. He drove an old vehicle rented under another name. His goal was simple. He wanted to experience his own healthcare system as an ordinary uninsured patient. He expected inconvenience. He expected long waits. What he did not expect was humiliation. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Ethan arrived at one of the largest hospitals owned by his corporation. The weather was cold, and people crowded the emergency department seeking treatment. He entered the waiting room carrying only a small wallet and a fake identity prepared by investigators who occasionally helped corporations test customer experiences. The room smelled of disinfectant and exhaustion. Parents held sick children. Elderly patients sat quietly in wheelchairs. Tired nurses moved rapidly between stations. Within minutes Ethan began feeling genuine chest pain. At first he assumed it was stress. But the discomfort grew stronger. A sharp pressure spread across his chest and into his arm. Suddenly the experiment became real. When he approached the front desk, struggling to breathe, the receptionist immediately asked for insurance information. Ethan explained he had none. The receptionist's expression changed slightly. Not cruelly. Not dramatically. Just enough to make him feel invisible. Forms were placed in front of him. Questions continued. Meanwhile, the pain intensified. He completed paperwork with trembling hands before being directed back to the waiting area. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The pressure in his chest became unbearable. Other patients were called before him. Several staff members assumed he was experiencing anxiety. One suggested he simply needed rest. Another barely looked at him. Ethan sat there realizing that if he truly were a poor uninsured patient, he might never receive urgent attention. For the first time in his life, money could not solve the problem. Fear entered his heart. Real fear. The kind his mother must have felt. The kind millions of ordinary people experienced every year. Then someone noticed him. Her name was Claire Bennett. Claire was 28 years old and worked long shifts in the emergency department. She wasn't famous. She wasn't powerful. Most executives in Ethan's corporation had never heard her name. But she possessed something rare. She genuinely cared. Claire had become a nurse after losing her younger brother to a medical condition that doctors initially dismissed. Since then she trusted her instincts when patients appeared to be suffering. As she walked through the waiting room, she saw Ethan sitting forward, pale and drenched in sweat. Something about him worried her immediately. She stopped. She looked carefully. She noticed his breathing. His posture. His eyes. And she recognized danger. While others saw an uninsured man who appeared stressed, Claire saw a patient in real distress. She quickly checked his vital signs. Within moments her concern deepened. The numbers were alarming. His blood pressure was unstable. His heart rhythm appeared abnormal. Claire acted fast. Ignoring criticism from co-workers who believed she was overreacting, she pushed for immediate evaluation. Some staff questioned her judgment. Resources were limited. Beds were scarce. Many assumed Ethan was exaggerating symptoms to receive faster treatment. But Claire refused to walk away. She fought for him. And that decision saved his life. Doctors eventually discovered a serious cardiac condition developing beneath the surface. Another delay could have caused permanent damage, or worse. As Ethan lay in a hospital bed recovering, he couldn't stop thinking about one fact. Without Claire, he might have died. Nobody knew he was a billionaire CEO. Nobody knew he owned the hospital. Claire helped him simply because she believed his life mattered. Over the next several days, Ethan remained under observation. He continued hiding his identity. The experience opened his eyes in ways no board meeting ever could. He watched patients struggle to understand medical bills. He observed exhausted staff working double shifts. He listened to worried families crying quietly in hallways. And he noticed something else. Many nurses and doctors genuinely cared, but the system itself often prevented them from helping people effectively. Administrative pressure. Staff shortages. Budget restrictions. Productivity targets. All these invisible forces affected patient care. Claire became a regular presence during his recovery. She checked on him frequently. She encouraged him when fear overwhelmed him. She treated him with dignity even though she believed he was an unemployed man with no insurance. One evening Ethan noticed how tired she looked. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. Her shoes were worn. Yet she continued comforting patients with patience and compassion. Later he overheard co-workers discussing her situation. Claire was raising her younger sister alone after their parents died. She worked overtime constantly. Money was tight. Yet despite her own struggles, she never stopped helping others. The realization hit Ethan hard. The people doing the most important work often received the least recognition. As days passed, Ethan learned more about the hospital than years of executive reports had ever taught him. He discovered departments operating with outdated equipment. He found nurses purchasing supplies with their own money. He heard stories of patients avoiding treatment because they feared costs. Each discovery felt like a painful reminder of how disconnected he had become. Eventually Ethan was healthy enough to leave. Before departing, he thanked Claire sincerely. She smiled and wished him well. Neither knew their next meeting would change both their lives. A week later, executives across the corporation received an urgent meeting request. Confusion spread quickly. Ethan had returned. And he looked different. Employees expected another financial presentation. Instead, the CEO walked onto the stage carrying a stack of handwritten notes. The room fell silent. For nearly 2 hours Ethan shared everything he experienced. He described waiting in pain. He described feeling invisible. He described the fear of believing nobody cared. Many executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some lowered their eyes. Others appeared shocked. Then Ethan revealed the most important part of his story. Only one nurse believed him. Only one nurse stopped long enough to see a human being instead of a file. Only one nurse saved his life. Her name was Claire Bennett. The room became completely silent. Executives expected praise. What came next was accountability. Ethan announced sweeping reforms across the corporation. Emergency departments would receive increased staffing. Patient advocates would assist uninsured individuals. Administrative procedures would be simplified. Employee wellness programs would expand. Performance evaluations would prioritize patient outcomes alongside financial metrics. Millions of dollars would be invested in frontline care. For some executives, the changes seemed expensive. For Ethan, they were necessary. Because for the first time in years, he remembered why he entered healthcare in the first place. Weeks later Ethan returned to the hospital. This time he arrived openly as CEO. Employees lined hallways nervously. Managers prepared presentations. Everyone expected inspections. Instead Ethan asked for Claire. When she entered the conference room, she looked confused. She immediately recognized him. Shock spread across her face. The uninsured patient she had cared for was standing before her in a tailored suit surrounded by executives. For several moments she couldn't speak. Neither could many people in the room. Ethan explained everything. The experiment. The hidden identity. The lessons he learned. Then he thanked her publicly. Not because she saved a CEO. But because she saved a stranger. He told everyone that true healthcare begins when people choose compassion over assumptions. Tears filled many eyes. Including Claire's. But the story didn't end there. Ethan established a new employee recognition program named after Claire's values rather than her name. He wanted the focus to remain on service, not celebrity. Nurses who demonstrated extraordinary compassion would receive financial support, educational opportunities, and public recognition. The initiative spread across the company. Stories of kindness began surfacing everywhere. Employees felt seen. Patients felt heard. Gradually, hospital culture started changing. Not perfectly. Not overnight. But meaningfully. Months later Ethan visited one of the newly improved emergency departments. The atmosphere felt different. Wait times had decreased. Communication improved. Staff morale was stronger. As he walked through the facility, he noticed something hanging on a wall. A framed quote. It read, "Every patient is carrying a story you cannot see. Treat them as if their life depends on your kindness. Because sometimes it does." Claire had written those words. And they became a guiding principle throughout the organization. Meanwhile Claire's own life improved. The recognition brought new opportunities. Scholarships helped her continue advanced training. Financial support eased burdens she carried for years. Most importantly, she gained confidence that her voice mattered. For so long she had felt invisible. Now she understood that one person's compassion could create change far beyond what they imagined. One quiet evening, nearly a year after their first meeting, Ethan visited the hospital again. Not as a CEO. Not as an inspector. Just as a man reflecting on how much his life had changed. He stood in the waiting room where everything began. Patients still waited. Nurses still hurried through busy shifts. Challenges still existed. But hope existed too. Because one nurse had chosen to care. Ethan thought about his mother. He imagined what she would say if she could see him now. For the first time in many years, he felt he had finally honored the promise he made beside her hospital bed. The promise to make things better. Not through profits. Not through headlines. But through humanity. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. The people who change the world are not always those with the most power. Sometimes they are the ones who stop walking when everyone else keeps moving. Sometimes they are the ones who believe a stranger's pain. Sometimes they are nurses like Claire. Before this story ends, leave a comment below and tell us, what would you have done if you were in Claire's position? If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that remind us of the power of kindness. Your support means more than you know. And one final question for our amazing viewers around the world, which country are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to see how many nations are connected through this story of compassion, hope, and second chances. Red Heart.